So good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Standing Committee on Strategies and Public Policies. This is a meeting where we hear presentations. There will be no decisions made. And this evening, actually, it's in mostly presentations concerning municipal budgets for the year 2020. So without further ado, I'm going to be asking for the representative of the Kodiak Regional Policing Authority, which is, I think, tonight represented by Mr. James Grave, to come forward, and we will be able to wish you a warm welcome.
Bonjour tout le monde. Bonjour. Je suis pas James Graves.
Good evening. I'm not James Graves. Well, yeah, I didn't think you looked like him. No, I guess he wasn't available, and Nagesh, our treasurer, was supposed to be here, but I think he might be caught in traffic. So I am the relief pitcher. Yeah, true, it's true. There's a lot of traffic in Moncton. It's very difficult to drive around in the city of Moncton. I hope he just didn't get stopped by the police. Well, maybe he's going to come here with a ticket. So, I have about 5 or 6 slides. So in the past, the RCMP used a method called the PRN, Policing Researching Methodology, and we do this approximately every 2 years. It's based a little bit on the time that's available once they've done all their tasks, what kind of time they're available when we have a shift. So there's a norm that they have to have enough time, not for a specific task, where they can do other activities, patrolling or things like that. So the PRM should have been around 143 regular members. And that was our staff complement. That's what we were using. So we found that, you'll see in the next slides, that one of the factors where we could have the amount of overtime shifts that were basically missing. We couldn't even reach the minimum level for a shift. We found that we always have problems with that, even if the PRM gave us 143, which should be enough. So when you see on the slide here in front of you, we had population growth. We used the study that was used for the building of the new detachment of Kodiak that said that if we looked at the predictions of the population, we should probably use 1.5% for regular members and municipal members. And that was approximately an average growth, not low, not high, average. So we were using that, but we wanted to use that more or less with the PRM, and it was working okay until we found that we found out about the causes for the overtime and the fact that we couldn't reach the minimum level. It was the yearly average of sick leave, 3.5, paternity, anything that you can imagine, PTSD, it says that would be included in that. Training, there's a lot of training at the RCMP that is mandatory for carbines, different type of equipments, and there has to be updates, so that's 4.5 for a regular member. And then also when people are going to be moving from one region to another, if they're coming in, there's always an in and out. So when you calculate this, it costs us approximately the equivalent of 4 regular members per year. So, and also the last one, the participation in special units or specialized units, that's good in a certain way, but it's not as easy for staffing because sometimes they are gone for training or something for events, and they have to join other things. This cost us 6 regular members. On the other hand, it's something that we don't need for TACTRU specialized units. I mean, if we need everybody for training in St. John and Fredericton, that means that we would need more members. But we can use the fact that the RCMP in New Brunswick has a big team, and we just participate a little bit. But the point here is that concerning the PRN and the 143, we're talking about another 6 members that we don't have on a daily basis. So if we look at this, it would give us approximately 20%, 18% of our staff that wasn't there, with 28 members basically that were not available to work every day. So this is where we saw that there was a problem with the PRM. So the gap, 20 members, regular members, we're missing that. That has to be in course to do with the percentage for patrol. That means that we don't get the minimum staff threshold. We can see it here. Over the last couple of years, there's a difficulty to fill those shifts. So the 41% doesn't mean that there was 41% of the members that were missing. But if we took all the shifts, I'm going to take an example. For example, if we're supposed to be 15, that would be the minimum threshold. But normally we'd have 20 or 22 that would be scheduled to work. But it would mean that we'd probably be 14. That would be below the threshold. That doesn't mean that we are 5, but the average of the gap for the member is approximately 8 members. So we need to bring people in for overtime to reach the minimum threshold of 15. It's not going to mean that we're going to be 20 or 22 as a real shift, but that would be number 1. Number 2, it's the increase of overtime. It's the same thing for the budget. We have difficulty in controlling that, even if the PRM says that we have sufficient members. There's no choice, because the number 1 that's going to increase, it means the number 2 is going to increase. And then number 3, this is the increase in crime indexes. There are 3 kinds, basically. One is nonviolent, and then violent, and it's general. The 3 of them, the index is the rate for the highest for Kodiak. It's the highest in New Brunswick. It's higher than the national average for the 3 sorts. That's over the last 2-3 years that we're above the average. I mean, if you consider the last 20 years, it was going down, but the last 3 years, as in Canada, as in New Brunswick and Kodiak, it increased, but here it's increased a little more than the national average. So maybe there's not a direct link, but it's still a consequence of not having staff shortages. So this brings us to the budget, as you're going to see. It involves an increase of the number of regular members. It's too bad that Nagesh isn't here. I'm not an accountant. I'll do my best. So the first one, it's the pay and allowance. It hasn't been determined yet. It's 2.5% is needed to basically to cover when the Treasury Board is going to decide the increase. It's not going to be 15% this year. We put in 2.5%. This is what we're told should be the proper amount. So we'd be adding the 4 new regular members, and we adjusted the overtime. Before that, the overtime was approximately 850,000, but it was always higher than that, and we would put it down under the 4th box, salary slippage. So we put it there, salary slippage. So we inverted it so that it shows, so we see what the overtime is, and then the salary slippage should be shown later. So it's just a question of a job adjustment. The other one, the O&M, there's a new tactical training facility. For example, in Gagetown, we're using this in the past years. I think it was being used up to this month. Gagetown doesn't want to have the RCMP use that site, so we have to find somewhere else. We'll be doing some retrofitting, and that's going to be the cost. There are the costs also related to the new vehicles. I think we bought new. This year we're going to buy some more. There's going to be a little difference. And then the GPS connection radios, that's something that lets us know where they're going. So that would be the second box. And then indirect costs, the div admin that occur. There's a lot of different things in div admin. There's the first category would be the type of IT, HR, things like that. So that would be one in a div admin. The second aspect would be with
Ça fait qu'il y a les dividendes.
so in the div admin, there are two sorts. Like I said, one would be the HR, finance, things like that. The second one would be really with the members, PTSD, sick leave. After 30 days, they are dropped from our budget and they're put on another budget for 30 days. It's like an insurance. You have to pay the insurance for the people to have it. So the insurance goes up or goes down according to the amount of members that we have to pay when they're sick. So that would be the new costs. And then a little bit, like I said, we'll be reducing it because we increase the overtime to balance it out. Concerning revenue, we added the regional fire dispatch for new revenue, the 911, the OCC center. We're going to be starting to do fire dispatch for the whole region. We have a contract with 30 municipalities. We're in the process of negotiating this, and it'll give us a nice revenue. We have salary increases, municipalities, 1.5%, something like that. And then we're hiring a new municipal member. We wanted to have 4 regular members, but the Crown is demanding us to have a reader, somebody who's going to be basically everything to make sure that they are Crown ready. The connection between the RCMP and the Crown, so we established a reader, but it doesn't necessarily be a member with a firearm. It could be an ex-member. So that's how we're going to be establishing the reader. We've been trying someone out, and it makes a very big difference. In the end, it's going to make things much more efficient, but that's why we have 4 regular members and 1 municipal member. Like that makes a difference. So the total increase for this year, 1,746,581. That's 5.41% for the upcoming year. So we talked last year about the multi-year plans, and we see in the first box everything that we predicted in a couple of years, but with everything that I've just told you, there were still problems. The PRM didn't give us exactly. We had to find other ways to explain what was going on. So this would be the second box for 2020, 2021, 2022. We're going to try to reduce the gap that exists now in the second slide that I showed you. So this is what we're predicting. We're going to be continuing to do a simulation, put the members where they are needed. We're going to be looking at the figures, all sorts of techniques. But I wanted to at least give you an idea of what it was going to look like next year to try to reduce the gap. But I mean, even if we compare ourselves to other municipalities in the province, we had approximately 78 regular members per 100,000 people. And the province average with us included is approximately 160 members per 100,000 people. There are fewer of us, but the RCMT offers efficiencies with the J Division because they have different, bigger complement. But there still are limits. We can see them in the figures and our level of overtime that is increasing a lot. So that's basically it for the presentation tonight. I would guess you'd have a couple of questions. So members of council, questions from members of council. Monsieur Alain, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was great. I sit on the CRPA. I know it's an expense that's fairly high. It's not easy, 5.41%, but I support them at 100% on the planning that you're going forward with. These are difficult issues, what's going on, and over the last 5 years, since 2014, it hasn't been easy for the force. And I think that Mr. Crishlaw has a plan. It's going to be difficult to work it, but if we give him the resources, basically that's my comment. I think the funds are properly used. We've done many revisions of the different expenses, but as far as I'm concerned, he will have my support 100%. Thank you. Madame Arsenault, thank you. Mr. Mayor? I think it's excellent, the 5.1% is necessary for our security. We need it. There's no problem there, but there's something that bothers me with HR. What? I didn't understand, sorry? Well, maybe I didn't understand probably. Gagetown, you said that the RCMP, the police force, cannot use the facilities there. Yeah, that's what we were told, that Gagetown is no longer available. Yeah, it's no longer available. So I believe that the lease was over in November, so it didn't give us that much time to find a solution. Do we have... yeah, I think they're going to be getting a lease somewhere else, because significant training really starts in January. That's when we're busy, so we'll be needing to hurry up and find someplace. Thank you. Thank you, Madame Arsenault. Anybody else? Monsieur Godet. I have a question concerning the regional aspect of Kodiak. Do we exchange officers, be it from Sackville or from Bathurst? Are there exchanges being made when you need more staff? And if that is the case, are these costs that we incur directly in overtime, or is there still sharing with the province and us? That's part of specialized units. Within that theme, there are no costs in differences. It's overtime, so the people closer to Southeast are going to say, would you like to come do some overtime? We can do that with staff. But if there are any exchanges, we would pay them. No, I don't think so. So it would be in these themes that overtime it would be the same, but sometimes we like that because it's not one of our staff that's going to get tired. But when we had the big problems 2 years ago, there were a lot of officers coming from almost everywhere. So was that cost incurred totally by Kodiak? Well, thank you for the question. It depends on the situation. Let's say, for example, that there was a homicide. Well, then we use some resources from other sections outside of Kodiak, for example, and we don't pay for the salaries, except, as Charles said, that we pay for overtime. But it gives us, for example, more than 5 or 6 other resources that that are not an extra charge. So we have other resources, and like Charles mentioned, with the CMP, we have specialists who share their expertise with us on some cases, be it forensics or bomb dog or emergency response or any other type of requirement. We pay for their charges, like overtime, yes, but not to borrow the expertise. If Shijak or another place need, for example, 3 added officers, there could be a serious accident or it could be something criminal, and you send 2 or 3 officers there to give him a hand, that is reimbursed? Yes, absolutely. We're in a kind of a unique position here in the division because the other 3 districts, East, West, and Southeast, are part of the provincial contract. We have the municipal contract, and it's separate from the provincial contract. So we have to manage our salaries, our charges, and sometimes we give them resources over there, but somewhere else, but they pay us for that. Thank you, Mr. Godet. Any other questions? It seems not, so thank you for the presentation, and we'll continue working on the budget. Thank you, good evening.
What the City of Moncton would expect, right?
So, for the second presentation, we have the team from TransAqua. We have Kevin Rice and Mr. David Moore. So, welcome. To this meeting of the Standing Committee on Strategies and Public Policies.
Je m'appelle David Muir. I'm the chairman of TransAqua, and as the mayor has already said, he's our general manager. And we have one of your representatives, J.P. Ouellette, brand new and contributing already to the commission. And Yves Gagnon sends his regrets tonight he couldn't make it. And you'll see sitting in the back there too, we also have Chanel. And Chanel was a long-term representative for the city of Dieppe, did a very, very good job for the city, and we were sad to see him go, but his time was up, so maybe sometime in the future. But anyway, we won't waste too much time. We'll just get right into our presentation. I'm just going to do a couple slides, and I'm going to turn the hard work over to Kevin, who will lead you through some of the budget items.
Just like the previous presidents.
That's correct. First of all, just
Do we get a rebate that our personnel helps you all night like that? Or?
well, we'll do an audit.
Okay.
And we'll check it at the end of the year for. But we'll just run through our vision. We've done a strategic plan, of course, like most of us, and our GMWC vision to be an outstanding environmental steward, supporting regional planning, economic development, and quality of life for the communities of Moncton, Dieppe, and Riverview. Yeah, I got it. And our mission statement to collect and treat wastewater in a reliable, cost-efficient, and environmentally responsible manner. And these two items really haven't changed over the last few years. Our 2020 priorities: ensure cost-effective, sustainable delivery of services while freezing the unit rate for 2020 at $210. And as any of you who know, who've been following us and with our project, we tried to commit to keeping that rate in place until the end of 2020. During the year, we'll also hope to get into operation our computerized maintenance management system and implementation of the asset management program. And another big project we're going to do, we're developing our infrastructure deficit report card and including a long-term GMWC capital reserve funding plan. And so at the end, when that's done, we'll know exactly what our capital expenditures would be, and we'll be able to project that some years in the future, and that'll help us really decide on what the rates should be in the future. And we're going to try to continue engaging our stakeholders, clearly communicate our message, and complete a public opinion survey in 2020. We're also going to be commissioning one half of the bioreactor in our expansion program by the end of August, and hopefully the entire bioreactor by December 2020. And if you have any questions on that, certainly Kevin can explain it better than I can. We're going to continue with the design and construction of the ultraviolet disinfection system, which is the last part of our project, and that'll include a heat recovery system that can power 100 homes each year. So now we'll come to the capital budget. Kevin, take that over. You'll notice there's one item in our budget that we had included. We had a $350,000 study for among all the municipalities and Transaqua for the combined sewer outflows. We've taken that out of the budget. We're going to wait until our infrastructure deficit is done by the end of next year, and hopefully we'll have that back in. But we're still hoping that the municipalities will see their way clear to funding a portion of that each, since we see it as a beneficial project for all of us, not just for Transaqua. So I assume there's no questions from me. I'll let Kevin take over the budget sides.
Well, let's just make sure about that.
I can't get away that easy.
Any questions from the council? Est-ce qu'il y a des questions de la part des membres du conseil pour M. Muir?
Any questions for Mr. Muir?
Much. I appreciate that a lot.
Thanks very much. It's nice to be back here again this year,
Good evening,
presenting
Kevin.
our capital budget. Lots to talk about. We're going to try to keep it very short. We have a whole lot going on with our upgrade project, and if you wish to have me back to provide an update, I can certainly do that, or feel free to ask for a tour. We can take you for a tour. So basically with our upgrade project, our bioreactor is under construction. We're looking to complete our blower building construction throughout the winter. We have a nice big dome that we can put that under cover, and we can continue construction throughout the winter, saving about 4 months on our construction schedule. And our UV disinfection, as David mentioned, the design will start for that. Right now in our pilot project, we were able to power about 10 homes a year, but we're looking for a way to add some more heat recovery plates in the UV chamber to power at least 100 homes a year. So that's part of our strategic plan to look at more green ways of how we do business. The Fox Creek pumping station upgrade, if you're driving by that way, you may see some construction going on. We're actually pouring the first half of the wet well probably this week, so we'll be doing 2 17-foot pours for our wet well, and next year the construction of the blower of the building itself will happen, and we actually will be having a full backup power generator will be transferred from our treatment plant over to that building. So in the event of losing power, Fox Creek is an important pumping station for us. It will have backup power. Beaubassin, one of the things that we were going to do was a power backup for 2019, but we moved that to 2020. We actually wanted to do a study later this year and early next year to determine what our backup power requirements are for all of our pumping stations. So we've included Beaubassin into that study. So we're looking for some recommendations to continue that project. The heat recovery system integration at the compost facility, we are at the point where we can start to purchase some glycol and put them into those pads and be able to recover heat that's generated from the compost piles and recover that and use it to heat the rest of the facility. And the replacement of our main pumping station, the variable frequency drives, those have lasted since the treatment plant was built back about 25, 30 years ago, so they're at the end of their life cycle, so we're looking to replace those. So this is just kind of gives an explanation of how our long-term capital expenditure is put out towards the next number of years. Pretty straightforward. We have 2020, of course, is our biggest capital spend with the project. So some of our budget issues for 2020 include increase in property tax. So we've got some new buildings that Riverview is very happy to get some property tax income from, but they're built, so now we'll be charged some property tax on those. Insurance, of course, is going to go up with all the added infrastructure for phase 1 and 2, which is now complete. And electricity, so we're using a lot of electricity with respect to continuing construction activities for the upgrade project. We're projecting an increase in wages, rate increases for with respect to WCB. We put increases in there, although there's some indications they may not go up as much as we thought. With respect to wages, we are negotiating, we're starting to negotiate our collective agreement with our unionized workforce and hope to have that complete by the end of the year if all goes well. Reduction of interest income due to utilization of cash for the project. So out of $25 million that we have in capital reserves for the project, we've cashed $5 million of that to date so far. So we'll see a little bit of interest income reduction there because of that. As David mentioned, the unit rate will be frozen at $210. And an increase in septic load revenue. We're anticipating that. We've got 2 new customers, but the septic receiving building now has a flow meter, and it's now in operation. So before, the septic haulers were kind of on the honor system, estimating how much you have in your vacuum truck, whereas now we'll actually be measuring the flow. So good for us, might not be so good for them. So we're hoping that building will pay for itself in the next 5 years. We're looking, actually, we're going to be doing an asset risk management strategy in 2020. And what that's going to do is it's going to identify all of our assets, place them in risk in a level of criticality. So for us, just at a high level, the tunnel, the main pumps and the pumping station, the centrifuges, and the blowers for the bioreactor, we would consider critical infrastructure, because if those are knocked out, any one of them, we're out of business. So we want to do a risk management strategy to identify those critical components and start to look at purchasing parts that we can have in inventory, that if there is any major breakdowns, that we can immediately fix that equipment and keep us in business. We're purchasing 3 additional generators for backup power at the treatment facility. We'll be using 2 of them to manage the blowers at the bioreactor, and replacing one at our dewatering building. So the one that we have at the dewatering building, that will be going to Fox Creek. We're upsizing the one at our dewatering building so we can actually operate 1 centrifuge during a power outage. Right now, we don't have that capability. So we need to buy extra fuel. Radio advertising, we started radio advertising this year as a boost to our communication strategy. So you may have heard the kind of the tip of the week from Transaqua on a couple of radio stations. So we hope to continue that and enhance that. And we're looking at an increase in the depreciation expense. So phase 1 and phase 2, our primary clarifiers are now built and in operation. So automatically, we've got that on the books. We'll start to see depreciation for those assets almost starting immediately. So looking at the 2020 budget, right here with I asked to break this out intentionally because sometimes with the grants that are coming in from the federal government and the provincial government, it looks like we've got a whole lot of money coming in. So we wanted to break it out just so people understand what our surplus is before the government funding. So we're running a lower surplus in 2020. Our grant money is starting to decrease just because we are starting to make progress with respect to getting the project done. So those numbers are reflected. Again, you'll see our operating expenditures, as David mentioned, will increase by $350,000 since the decision was made to delay the regional wastewater and CSO strategy by a year. That wasn't included in these slides before I had sent those. And our capital expenditure just gives a list of the initiatives that we're undertaking in 2020, kind of breaks down with respect to what we're spending on the upgrade project, the final clarifiers, the bioreactor will continue to be built, as you can see, is the bulk of the expense, and the disinfection unit. Solids handling and centrifuge upgrades, they'll continue along as well. And with respect to the conveyance system, you can see the investment that's being made with respect to Fox Creek and also the design of the Bourke Road force main. That will continue over the next couple of years until we're finished. And the Beaubassin, we are looking at the emergency power there as well. And then operations, it's just a matter of replacing assets that have reached the end of their life cycle. And with that, if you have any questions, please feel free.
Question, Monsieur Godette.
Any questions, Mr. Godette?
And then the rest, at the end of the year, it's going to be at full capacity. How big a deal is that with respect to the citizens' use of their waste, or not use of wastewater, but disposal of wastewater? And if it is a big deal in terms of change in habits, have you decided to boost up your communications package dealing with that? And I use the example of the waste management group when they went from 2 bags to 3 bags. There was a long period of time when there was a lot of announcements made to try and convince the people to change their ways, etc. Do you envision that with respect to your bioreactor in terms of trying to change the public's use or disposal of wastewater?
Absolutely. We started that endeavor this year with respect to our weekly radio advertising on Facebook, on Twitter. We've been putting messages out on a weekly basis on a number of topics. We have started with respect to educating people with respect to fats, oil, and grease, because with the bioreactor going to a biological process, they don't like fats, oil, and grease because it facilitates the harmful bacteria in the bioreactor. So we've been pushing that message we talked to the Restaurant Association. We've been talking with our technical committee, which Angel's a member of, and we're looking to put together some information packages that we would unveil to the public with respect to fats, oil, and grease, and also putting organics using carburetors as well, because when you put organics down into the sewer system, they start to degrade, and as they degrade, they consume oxygen. So once they hit the bioreactor, we have to pump that oxygen back in to keep the bacteria alive. So what I do appreciate is the City of Dieppe, in your spring community magazine, we were able to put in our sewer do's and don'ts information as well. And also, we're going to be partnering with Eco360 at the March Home Show. We'll be sharing a booth with them to try to promote our message as well with respect to the carburetors, the fats, oil, and grease. And we want to make sure that we're helping to educate people. And, we talked about it a little bit of, at the Home Show of maybe having some skill testing questions, some storyboards, and maybe the lucky winner can get a free water and sewer rates for the year. So we are doing some promotion around that, and we expect to do more of it in 2020.
Because one of the questions I have is that sometimes you have people that'll have a half-gallon of cooking oil that's rancid, and they don't really know what to do with it. So it ends up in the drain by most people. And some people will say, well, you can bring it somewhere. Well, they say, where do you bring it? And will they take it? And all these kinds of answers. And I think there needs to be some promotion on that, or even consider having a disposal equipment somewhere within the community where they can just go bring it and get rid of it.
That's been talked about. We've been partnering with Eco360 and meeting on a quarterly basis on a number of initiatives that we can work on together. And you know, one of the things we talk about is with the Eco Depot, is that a possibility for them to do something like that? What we would tell citizens, and what I do myself, is I just put it into my compost bin and it goes out every week. It's easy to do. You know, you have dry stuff and you have wet stuff in your compost bin. So if the oil's wet, a lot of the dry stuff in your compost bin will absorb it. So it's quite simple. Anything that's organic, oil-based, like food oils, can go right into your compost bin.
I won't ask you what the percentage of compost bins there are in the community versus the number of residents. I doubt if it's very high. So I think there's other alternative you'll have to think of.
Yes, and we'll be working with Eco 360 to try to
Because
promote
the
that.
Eco 360, when they come to Dieppe, they come every 6 months. It's not enough. But they have a lot of communities to go to, so they can only come in twice a year. So, thank you.
Merci. Autre question, Madame?
Any other questions, Madame Leboutier?
So can you elaborate a little bit on the 30.5% increase? I think there's a bit of salary in there from 2019 to 2020. So the administration expensive?
Administration expenses, they've increased, okay. Oh, a lot of that has to do with our engineering consultants. So when I talk about doing the study with respect to backup power, legal expenses, they all come out of administration. Actually, with respect to wages, you know, we have a management group that we're actually reducing by one manager in 2020. So those costs have gone down. The administration expenses also include electricity, property taxes, all those types of items that I had talked about previously that are going up. That would be factored into that line item.
And if we've gone back, like, for the provision, the forecast that was, are we at par with what was anticipated right now? Like,
In 2020, you mean 2019 with our budget
Yeah.
now? We are actually operating at below our budget projections.
thank you.
Merci, Madame. Excusez-moi, Monsieur Alain.
Mr. Alain, then Madame Arsenault.
So, the Councillor Leboutilier's question, 30.5% administrative expense is not sustainable for the long period of time. So I hope that we could have more information regarding that line item moving forward, because obviously if that same line item is 30.5% next year, serious questions there. So that's, I'll leave it at that. I want to echo my Councillor Godet's comments also. For me, I'm in the people business, right? I love people. So that's why, for me, seeing you work with Eco 360, great person in charge of Eco 360. But those are initiatives that are so important to make sure that the message is passed, because it's half the battle. I'm sure if people would have a better ability to disseminate what can be put in there, half the battle will be done. So congrats, and continue, please, to work with organizations like Eco 360, because I truly believe that organizations like yourself, NGOs, need to be in the people business. Last question would be on capital budget. So the capital budget from the next 14 years is elaborated here, and I'm just looking at my slide here. So the traitement biologique, which is the bio, which is next 2 years. So the transportation system, I think, le système d'acheminement, is elaborated for next 14 years. And they see peaks in 2006, 26, 27, 28. What would that be attributed to?
That would be attributed to the second river crossing and the Virginia wastewater pumping station upgrade. So what we're projecting, our goal has been on the capital plan for a long time, but we're looking at a second river crossing that will intercept hot sewage, if you will. It's undiluted, it's not from combined sewers, from Moncton North and all of Dieppe. Will flow to the Virginia pumping station through a second river crossing directly into our inlet building. That's ideally what we want. We don't want diluted sewage. So we're going to take that hot sewage, we're going to try to keep it from being diluted and inject it directly into our inlet building right into the process, rather than going into our wet well and mixing and becoming diluted.
So pardon my ignorance, where's the first crossing right now?
The first crossing is on Main Street. It's just behind the running room.
Okay, yeah.
That's where everything collects from Moncton, Dieppe, and collects there, and then comes across a tunnel underneath the river. Comes into our wet well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Merci. Madame Arsenault.
Merci, Monsieur Maire. Mr. Rice, always nice to see you at the podium. Thank you very much for giving us good news about an infrastructure that's going to give us more money as for our taxes. The other thing is, I'm interested in the glycol recovery. Is that going to be what's going to be increasing the amount of heat that we're going to have dispersed into 100 houses, you said possibly, from 10 to possibly 100? Is the glycol going to make the difference?
No, the glycol initiative in our capital plans for our compost facility.
Yes.
With our compost pads, that will be using the glycol to collect the heat from those piles. With respect to the glycol coming from the airport,
Yes.
It's not, we did the full analysis. We visited a facility in Westchester, New York that has the same type of facility that's proposed for the airport here. And it really meets our needs. From a biological perspective, the amount of glycol that will be coming to our system is not going to hurt it. If anything, in the cold winter months, when the biological activity starts to slow down, if we can meter the amount of glycol coming to our system, the bacteria actually, it's like candy for them. They'll wake up and they'll start munching and they'll be very happy. So it's kind of a win-win situation with respect to how the airport's going to handle their glycol and how it's going to impact us. So it's going to impact us positively, but we're okay with that.
Wonderful news, really. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Quelqu'un d'autre? No, I guess that's it. I want to say how much I appreciated the open house you had a couple of months ago. I have not been to the site in many years, to say the least, and I think it's just been so many good improvements that have been made. So congratulations to the commission, yourself, and your staff. Thank you.
We shall continue with another favorite subject, public transportation. Madame Alain and Mr. Hauser. Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, everybody.
Hauser usually does attend with me, but tonight it's
Chickened out on
just me. He's at another council meeting, actually.
Okay.
And he's
Well, I hope he gets a good beat up.
I'll let him know. So just before I get into the budget items, I just wanted to thank you again for having us as your service provider. We're very pleased to provide transportation, public transit here for your citizens. It creates a lot of employment. It enables people to access workplaces that they couldn't otherwise. It gives people a lot of independence, so it's a very important service. We have a few technology projects underway. I just wanted to let you know. We're updating the GPS system that's on our fleet, including the Dieppe buses. So we're currently in testing phase with that. We have new hardware on the buses and new software to run this. Once this is all live, it will give a lot more information to the public, more real-time information. So it's an enhancement on what's already available. We also have scheduled for 2020 as well to replace fare boxes. The fare boxes in the buses are quite outdated, so these are two projects that are currently underway. So this, there's just a few slides, so I'll get right into these. This opening one, this represents the tri-community budget for Kodiak Transpo. So this is Moncton, Riverview, and Dieppe all combined. It's broken out into 6 categories, as you can see: administrative and general expenses, building expenses, bus operations, which includes bus operator labor and fuel, bus maintenance, maintenance and repairs, service salary. Service crews are the employees we have that do the shunting of buses, parking, fueling, cleaning, and shelter maintenance is window cleaning and also snow removal. So there's the total expenditures for the 3 communities, and we're going to get into some more detail here. So this second slide is another, I'll call it another overview slide. It is comparing 2019 to 2020, and you can see we're submitting essentially a status quo budget. It's $153 more than last year, so that's good news, I believe. So the details on these expenditures, I'll go through these. So the first line item, administrative and general expenses, I won't go into the details on each of the dollar values, but certainly if you have any questions, we can cover them when I'm finished this slide. So the second line on building expenses, there's not a lot of change between the numbers, so I'm just going to move down here into under bus operations. We have operator labor, fuel, and radio, supervisor vehicles, and tools. So under operator labor, this is $687,303. This is the cost for the 2020 budget for your base level of service for transit service here in Dieppe. And you can see the fuel broken out there, and as I mentioned, the other support tools and communication usage that we have for the employees. Then we have service crew itemized there. And then moving down into bus maintenance, replacement buses, $23,500. You do have one bus that we utilize as a spare for Dieppe as a primary. This is just if you have more than one bus out of service. And direct bill bus maintenance, we have a budget of $145,000 a year for the 4 buses that you operate. It's pretty much in line with where you are currently. We tend to not underestimate that budget just because of unexpected repairs as the fleet ages. So the subtotals there, you can see 2019, 1.37, 2020, 1.37, so we're pretty close. Revenue story is very good. It's definitely going in the right direction. We had a budget this year of $310,000 with the projection of $340,000 by the end of this year. Again, we don't want to overestimate. We'd rather achieve beyond what your expectations are there. So we've budgeted $310,000 for 2020. And the shelter maintenance is itemized at the bottom, $4,000. And as I mentioned, this is for cleaning the glass on the transit shelters that are provided for customers in the community. And that's the summary of the total budget, is $1,066,270. So I think I'll conclude on that and certainly open it to questions.
Okay, and I see some lights lighting up. Mr. Monsieur Godet.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. I have a question related to the infrastructure or the bus purchasing program that we have started. We had predicted that this year we would be buying some extra buses. We were going to do some work within the infrastructure itself, and monies were set aside by both municipalities, and I think there was money set aside annually by the federal government. And at this time, nothing is moving. I understand that all the applications to the provincial government, because it is a federal-provincial agreement in terms of funding, everything is being held up there. Is that still the case today? Do we have any indication that the province is going to move on this and that we're going to be able, because everybody talks about transportation and transportation for the general public and trying to cut down on green, gases, yet we have a program that's stalled. Do you have any idea as to when that'll move? Since I'm sure you're talking to the various people every week, so.
Thank you, Councillor Goodet. Yes, as you know, there is a delay. There's certainly a tremendous amount of funding that's available through the federal government. The problem is currently with the provincial budget, so it's been delayed for 2019 and expected to be discussed for the 2020 budget provincially. It's possible, if that doesn't work out, that we could still access some of the federal funding, but we certainly could maximize the impact of that if we had all three levels of government participating. There's certainly a need. Our goal is to replace all the old buses. We want to have wheelchair accessible service 100% in all three communities. So we certainly, every community wants to be buying buses. It's just a delay. And as far as I know here, as well as the other communities, we've all just moved our capital money ahead 1 year, delaying the project 1 year. We expect it'll still happen.
If the monies that were projected for this year, if they are not spent, can they be moved to the following years, or will that money be lapsed and gone?
The federal transit
Yes.
portion? No, as far as I know, that money is secured for the Moncton region, which is Moncton, Riverview, and Dieppe, and it's established based on transit ridership, so it's not supposed to be earmarked for other projects.
No, that's not what I meant. I mean, does it lapse at the 31st of March because we didn't spend it within the fiscal year that was allocated?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, Madame Le Boutillier.
Mr. Councillor Goodet asked a question, but I want kind of the same question also, but I wanted to elaborate on the last meeting, not the last one, but the previous second to last that we had with the tri-communities. We were talking about the addition of the new buses, and the new buses, if I recall, right now we are ordering gasoline and not electric ones, right?
That's correct.
So where and when are we going to move forward on electric buses in our region? Because we're going completely.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. That's an excellent question. It's certainly an area we're interested to move forward in, and there are more suppliers every year that are offering these buses. So it's just, again, back to the federal funding. It'll be really important to see how the election results occur and any changes to the transit funding. All the parties are very positive about transit infrastructure funding, but there may be measures depending on who's in the majority role in government as to when electric may move forward quicker than others may wish, but they're certainly available on the market today. And they're more expensive, so it does require a plan, and we certainly would be looking for funding partners and also cooperation from MB Power to enable the infrastructure required to, we would remove the diesel from the component. We'd be looking at 100% electric, like overnight charging probably, and we would have to put infrastructure at our building in order to accommodate that, depending on how many buses we went with. So it's, for Moncton, they have it in the capital budget 5 years from now, 2 to 6 electric buses, depending on funding. So it's certainly feasible. The range on most electric transit buses would accommodate the community bus routes that we have in this region. They wouldn't have to be charged more than once a day. So it's a very interesting question, and we all, as staff, we look forward to that day.
Me too.
Yes.
Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you. Anybody else? No?
Turning on, so I was going to ask the same question with regards to whether, what kind of savings in terms of operational savings with gas, for example? Has there been any work done in that direction, or you must be you must belong to some association of transportation in Canada and have an idea of the savings that can be had between fuel versus electric vehicles?
I'm not an expert on it, but there's certainly some information out there. We'd probably have a consultant that would advise us on how to get into that business, just to ensure we had proper training for our mechanics and that type of thing as well. And to determine the power load we would need in our building. We would need some expertise to evaluate all of these things. But
you're telling us that our partners want to wait 5 years.
Well, it would be, if we could secure partnerships with other organizations such as MB Power, there's a great opportunity for them to see an increase in their business if we go with electric vehicles. So I don't see the partnerships just stopping at municipal, provincial, federal level, no.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gaudette, you had another question.
Just a quick question. We instituted last summer free bus rides for students up to the age of 17. Do you have any indication on how that's going in terms of ridership? Do we know if there's been a lot of students that have taken up that offer?
Thank you, Councillor. Well, first of all, congratulations on creating such a program and being a leader in this area in the communities. I don't have any real specifics on numbers. Luc Richard is our liaison, so he would probably have more specific information on that. I'm sorry.
Okay, so as you can tell from the amount of questions and the level of questions, Dieppe has a strong interest in public transportation, and we certainly want to continue to partner up with any opportunities of activities that will enhance that. I even heard a rumor that there was a couple of days ago or weeks ago where we actually had to put on an extra bus on our route because the buses were full.
Yes, that's correct.
So that's an event to be celebrated, in actual fact. So
Champlain Street, yes.
On Champlain Street. So with the amount of students going to the community college, I know there's been some efforts in the past to try and add a tab to their fee, schooling fee to accommodate the free pass on the bus and whatnot, and maybe that's something to consider. Again, we have to do a better job, I guess, convincing them that that's the way to go. It's the way of the future, and although it's still an expense, it will remain an expense. Public transportation is an expense to the same level as arenas are and aquatic centers are, but it's a service to the public, so we have to bear that in mind. I'm going to get off my pulpit and wish you a good evening. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay, la prochaine
So the next presentation is from Expansion Dieppe, Mr. Godbout, who should have been partnered with Monsieur Paré, but I see that it is not the case. Monsieur Paré, it appears, is not ready. Welcome, Monsieur Daigle. So good evening, everyone. Mr. Mayor, colleagues, members of the Municipal Council, I'm happy to be here replacing Mr. Paré. Mr. Sevier, the Secretary-Treasurer, are forgive themselves, one for professional activities, the other one for electoral activities. So I was asked to come here. We have to make sure that we see the people that Thank you, Stéphane. So Stéphane Thériault is on the board, as well as Mr. Mayor Lapierre, Councillor Lise Thibodeau, Councillor Ted Godette, Monsieur Melançon is also part of the board. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your volunteer time. You're talking about Lise Boutillier, not Lise Thibodeau, I guess. Yes, I'm sorry. I know that members of council work closely. So Guy Légère also is here from our team tonight. So we're going to be presenting very quickly the accomplishments over the last year with the funds that you give us to justify our request for funding for the next year. So I understand that you've received the presentation ahead of time, so there are some slides that I'm going to go through very quickly. The vision, the mission, that hasn't changed. The strategic plan till 2020. The priority axes haven't changed either. For the first one is the business development, and the other axes are the ones which support business development. So the settling of businesses here. Quickly then, the members of council. The new members should stress who have been added to the AGM in June. Adair Condy as an administrator, Yolande Landry as an administrator, André Pelletier as an administrator, Stéphane Thériault as an administrator, who is also staff here at the municipality. Our team changes over the year. Two people who have been added to the team, Bénédicte Hendry, usually of the immigration strategy with the municipality, and Robert Audoux, who's our new director of business development. And I see also, I'm going to take the opportunity to announce that the position that was vacant because Jacques Leblanc went on retirement is now filled, and that person will start work next week, and that person is Jean-Michel Alain. Our mandate is always to increase the fiscal base. We do that three ways, principally, making sure that we have viable lands for our business investors, a little bit like the real estate agent of the city. We try to create an prosperous economic environment to attract our businesses, and third, as facilitators for investors and entrepreneurs to ease the task and try to find opportunities of business for Dieppe, and we try to facilitate the whole process with the municipality to the extent that we can. The three sectors of development are always in the same areas. Our downtown, important work is being done there in the next couple of years. It's been a couple of years that we've been preparing investments made by the municipality. The sector of the Dieppe Boulevard and the Business and Technology Park, investments to be done there because I know some lands have to be urbanized. And then the industrial park and other future phases. The progress on the construction premises, we're going to have a very nice year this year. The municipality is partly responsible for this, but things happen either way. The non-residential is very strong at 49.6, and the residential also this year has more than doubled over last year. It's at 6.2. Here there are certain projects in our industrial park. Widening of the Irving Group and the widening of Post Canada also, which is very important, as well as projects here around the downtown area. We see this here, the differences here. This is an objective that we have in our strategic plan, trying to balance the tax base with the non-residential, which is bring it as much as as close to possible as 40% down on the bottom line in the gold. The other one is we want it to be at around 60% to make sure that it'd be a tax base that would be healthy for the municipality. Some of the accomplishments over the year, major accomplishments. Downtown, we bought 2 properties for SHNB to continue the development of Rideau Gauvin. So we are ready, basically, to develop the concepts there that had been developed during the master plan and the business plan. There was also commercial request that was put in for the downtown, and we'll also be revising financial incentives. We're still working at establishing the marketing communication strategy, which should have been done this year, but we've become a little bit late due to the resources that we have. So we're reworking the website. We're working our brand. We figure that there'll be a unveiling next year, basically to increase our visibility in the community. Obviously, 2 community banquets with our entrepreneurs. The banquet in March with 352 guests. It was a full house. And then our innovation 2019, the 3rd, soon this year, on the 30th of October next. So we'll be finishing the preparation. The ticket sales are really good. We have approximately 75% sold at last as of last week. CRED, the innovation research in Dieppe, and then the youth also with the CDR from Acadie Nord, and with our partnership of 3+. There was an agreement negotiated between the 3 municipalities, and this is a little bit of a sales pitch on innovation. Another thing that is not on the slide, the previous slide, is that when the presentation had been sent to you, we closed the purchase of an industrial 4.5 acre sale. It's closed. We received deposits on 2 other lands in the industrial. We're in negotiations with 3 other projects in the industrial park, the 3 other ones in the downtown area. So up to now, the year has been very fruitful. We're going to be seeing the results of these results over the next couple of years, next year and the years following. I just wanted to mention the partners, our honorary members for innovation. National Bank is here this year. Assumption Life has been added with a series of other private. So you see the names at the bottom there: BDC, Boudreau, Albert Savoie, Lawrencebury, McIntyre Finn, Peach Marketing, and the government partner, the province of New-Brunswick, through the post-secondary training and labor, who support very nicely through funding. We also had the support of the federal government, but in the previous year. But this year's well-being and business was not priority access for the ACOA, so we didn't get their support. But with private partners, we'll be able to balance the budget, and we're going to have a slight deficit nonetheless. It won't be a big one. Constructions, other than the ones I mentioned earlier, these are expansion Dieppe lands in Dieppe, Bourque properties on Buffin Street, Butco property that wanted to get bigger on Engelhard Street, and the city of Dieppe, the big Uniplex projects, and everything that entails as far as attracting other projects around the downtown area. There are also other projects that fill the list that have been done on private lands. I go to the next slide. These are the majority of non-residential construction over the year. for a total of 17.3 million. Concerning investments, actual and predictions for building permits for non-residential only. In the first column, 49.6 million, that's the actuals from January to September in non-residential. The predictions are going to be saying around the same numbers, so we don't figure there won't be more non-commercial, non-residential. Something that we're working on, but we'd be lucky if the building permits was given today. For 2020, in the projects that we're negotiating, we have predictions of 28 million. We're hoping it to be more, but there's a little bit of we're a little late. So the figures that we had, those will be for 2021. That's why we see another 50 million in 2021. In 2020, it's approximately 50-50 between the industrial park and the downtown area. That's 28 million. Investments of this year in building permits and the property taxes that are going to be coming in. So we take the predictions that we had and we round it out at 37 million together. For new property tax for 2020, around 1.8 million. These are the if the valuations, if the assessments are correct. So it would be the same amount, the same figures, but we don't exactly know how the assessments are going to come out concerning in relationship to the building permits. Concerning the different sectors, and the return on investments on the work that was done between the municipality and Expansion Dieppe, investments to develop sectors of the city, so downtown, technology and business park in Boulevard Dieppe, industrial park including Aviation Avenue, and then elsewhere in town. We took the value of building permits, non-residential, and the projects that were done since 2015, and we extrapolated the municipal taxes that they would represent. So once again, the 5.6 that would come from the municipality and the 5.1 that would come from the province the following year. These are figures that are not exact, but they're in the broad. It depends on the assessments that the province is going to be sending when the property taxes will be sent. In the opportunities for investments in the municipality, we say 2019, but really it's for the next 5 years. So there's a possibility of purchasing the SHNNB, 480,000. There are other acquisitions downtown, $300,000, for example. Those are properties that we're looking at. Expressions of interest on the island, Gauvin Island, and another development in the industrial park. There's also work for Gauvin Island. We'll be looking into that next year. In the industrial park, I have a figure here. Permanent signs, $50,000. These are signs that I'd already mentioned to council. Permanent signs to our industrial park that have to be renewed. These are old logos. They don't look too well. So it was suggested to me that there are 5 that have to be replaced. There are 5 businesses, 3 to replace, and 2 new ones on aviation. So that's approximately $250,000 project. So we'll spread it out over 5 years. So we'll have to look. That's $50,000 that we'll have to look at. That's included in our budget of this year. We'll come back to that. In the technology and business, we have to create lands on Trotteur, maybe in investments of $25,000 in technical services, and finally, construction of Trotteur Lane, 5 million over the next 5 years. These are figures that that I had heard other places. They were part of the budget. Concerning grants for land taxes, we convinced the province to give us a portion of the taxes because they're beneficiary of our projects. So the properties that we were able to give as submissions, the tax invoices were in the order of $117,000. And the province, the amount that they should reimburse is approximately $66,000, and the amount reimbursed to the municipalities is approximately $50,000. We're putting in the request, and we'll see how things are going. It doesn't represent the totality of the taxes annually. And finally, I wanted to get to this slide, which is the main one of the presentation. So these are our budget requests divided in 3 lines. There's a little bit of detail to go over. So concerning the fixed costs, administration, you'll notice that there's an increase of approximately $20,000. Concerning variable costs, there's a reduction of approximately $1,500. It's really negligible. On the priority axis, this is where we see a significant difference. There's an increase of $75,000. I'll explain it to you in a minute. The total budget for us, in terms of our operational budget, is 1.757 versus 1.664. The other revenue that we have indicated in the budget are revenue that receive for events that we hold, for the funding requests also that we put into province, the financing for land, property taxes, and the part of, so we have a balanced budget on this side. There's a little bit of a variation here. And then the following line is where it hurts. It's our development projects and capital investment that we do for the development, specifically in the industrial park and other sectors. There's a loss of approximately $200,000. So for 2020, we figured it'll be in the order of $265,000. So the request to the municipality, once we've taken these adjustments and we've taken the 1.15, it's an increase of $38,000 over the last year budget. So we'll have to explain this $38,000. Once we've corrected things between the priority axis, the increase of $75,000, and finally, $75,000. This $75,000 is $50,000 for the permanent signs that I mentioned earlier, and there's approximately $15,000 for signs for selling land in the downtown and on Gauvin and in the industrial park for the phases. We want to start there. And there's $18,000 for the strategic initiatives that we added concerning the air costs. They're increasing things, landing strips to get more freight. So we're working with them to see what can we get as other charges for places that are leaving Dieppe to go elsewhere in the world. So we would like to work on this this week. So that 75,000 priority axis, it's counterbalanced with these $78,000 in the loss of projects, because $50,000 and $15,000 were for the signs we're taking from there. So they basically cancel each other out. But if we look at the rest, the increase is approximately $38,000 in increase. It basically is composed of $25,000 increase for the cost of life, our operations, salaries, the benefits, safe work safe NB, and things like that. And finally, the other $13,000 of the $38,000 comes from basically. The 10,000 comes from the initiative that I mentioned on the 25 plus the 10 is 35, and then 38 the specific initiatives. we took a little bit of a risk at the request of the finance company to try to hold our events and to balance our budgets for the event. So we took away $10,000. We increased our revenue for the banquet by $10,000 to balance the budget, and we increased our budget for innovation by $3,000 to have it balanced. So that's going to happen too. So those are the figures where you see the difference of 378,000 compared to the 391,000. That's the loss. So that's basically the whole question. I just wanted to attract your attention on an element that that the members of council asked about the figure. You see the figure of 451,883. Those are the amounts that are going to be given to the municipality by the province of New Brunswick, according to our predictions. So these are land taxes, debenture for Phase 1 and Phase 2 Industrial Park of Dieppe that is being reimbursed on a yearly I think, basis. If we sell land on Babin, so it's almost 40,000, and then a little bit of our lease that we paid to the municipality, which is a good rate, but we still pay a lease, $15,000 approximately a year. So those are the figures of that compose the 451,000. If we look at this, we're in the order of 660,000 for Expansion Dieppe. So that's basically the end of my presentation. I'm ready to take questions. There are some.
Councillors, Mr. Alain, thank you for your presentation. The increase 2028-2019 for the total budget, would it be possible to have former budgets over the past 5 years to see how the budget increased? The subdivision and construction on Trotter Alley, 3.5 million, would that happen before Aviation Boulevard? It's a capital investment, so what we've done up until now, it's the city that does those capital investments. The land, what we want to do with this development is to develop the lands for local entrepreneurs. The small ones are about 2.5 blocks, and it's sometimes too big for a first project. So we want about 1 acre and 1.5 acres. That's what we wanted to do with that development. So we want a variety of lands for different entrepreneurs' needs. Is it a priority? Aviation Boulevard? The two of them go to different clients. If you were to choose, what would it be? Well, that's like as if Noma Casey did ventilation and the other one would cut the woods. Sometimes you have to make a choice. Thank you. Madame Arsenault, no? Or you got your answer? Yes, I'll go ahead. Thank you, Your Worship. The last figures you mentioned, $600,000 is the cost for expansion Dieppe. Is that what I understood? If you remove the amounts that we reimburse the city and the province to administer the organization, yes, we have $665,000. We're not talking about investment projects, but for the work that you do for our community, it's really worthwhile. Thank you. What's the old expression? Figures lie and liars figure. So it depends how you look at the figures, because if you talk about taxes, you have to give a salary to get taxes. The taxes don't come from the city. And that part, there's none of that in there. Yes, property taxes, yes. Any other questions? Mr. Alain? Was there a lot of work done on fixed costs and all that? Have you had a consultant to look at those figures compared to other industrial parks in New Brunswick? Different industrial parks, are there benchmarks that you can find somewhere respecting these costs? Yes. We've looked to see what the economic development was in different communities and the extent of their budget, but we've got figures from David Campbell, and who says you have to take them with a grain of salt because some organizations like tourism or economic development have development parks in a separate budget from economic development. Dave Campbell did it with who? We received figures lately, but there aren't any details. He said it was about 1 to 3%. Any other questions? Thank you for your presentation. And I would like to invite Mr. Degg to say a word. Thank you, Mr. Godbout, Your Worship. I just wanted to thank the council for continuous support with our budget, but also with the directors on our board of directors and employees as well, both employees that are on the board. So I want to thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Daigle. Economic development is important for the city, and we must keep good relationships with our partners, and I'm happy to see that there's a lot of work done and a lot of collaboration with 3+ and the new administration. There's new energy at 3+. I hope we can profit from those relationships with 3+. Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute break now.
Appear to be leaving us.
Welcome our next speaker.
Madame Debbie Warren for le groupe ou l'organisation Ensemble Grand Moncton, Ensemble Greater Moncton. Welcome, long time no see.
Been a long while, eh?
Yeah.
Your worship, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm going to talk about a community organization that has been around for 30 years, but in the past year we have just changed our name so people aren't familiar with who we are and what we do. So you may have known us as CIDA AIDS Moncton. And up until last year, that was the name under which we operated, providing support and education around prevention of HIV and AIDS. It's nice to work yourself out of a job. That tends to be what we do when we work in community, to make better lives in our community. And over the years with the treatment and research, well, there's not a cure for HIV. Certainly people are living long lives now. It is viewed as a chronic condition. The treatment has gone from handfuls of pills to 1 or 2 pills a day. And so everything being equal, people are able to adhere to the treatment, live long lives, and as the doctors tell them now, they're more apt to die from older age-related illnesses. So what we also found was with our name and moving forward, it was stigmatizing. People didn't necessarily want to be associated or connected with an AIDS organization. And our populations changed as well. And so we thought it was timely that we consulted with partners in community. What name would we go by? What would be our mission, et cetera. And we wanted to find a name that would work in both languages without having to be translated, because often it's challenging to get them to exactly translate. So we found ensemble, as we say in English, with your accent, ensemble, and it is together, working together, and that's what we do in our work. So we were quite happy with that. When we looked at the mission, it was long, 2 or 3 sentences, and of course now we know the smaller, more precise and direct missions are much easier to remember and the community understands. And an organization that has always worked with groups that are marginalized, we've always worked to alleviate complex social challenges. And you notice it doesn't say HIV, but we do primarily work to prevent HIV, hepatitis C, and other sexually transmitted and bloodborne infections. So our work has remained somewhat the same, but we're working with different populations. So this is our outgoing president, Michael Sink, and he came to us as a retired federal government employee and provided lots of expertise and support to the board of directors, helping with policies and helping to guide our organization through the name change. And that is yours truly, awful big picture, eh? And so I've been with the organization for 23 years now. So we've seen a lot of changes over the time. And I will say that the work has really evolved, and our work with young people has been most rewarding. And I'll talk further about the 2 populations that we primarily focus on, and that is the LGBTQ youth. We are funded through United Way funding primarily, and we focus on the 3 counties because that is the area that the United Way serves, so we agreed to meet those geographical lines. And we work to create inclusive communities for our young people, because we know that when they have a place that is welcoming and safe and inclusive, they'll thrive. We also know they have been isolated and have lots of mental health issues when we make them feel ashamed and not proud and sure where to go. And we've been doing this work full-time for 5 years, and we're starting to really see some growth with the young people. It takes a while to build the community. So what we've been able to do is we have a weekly drop-in, and we do have youth that come from the 3 counties, really from the 3 municipalities, because it's close. And we do have some come from the rural areas, but a weekly drop-in that we partner with Youth Quest. We have role models for them, might teach them cooking skills, might connect them with community services, but it's often meant just to be a place where young people can hang out and just be themselves. And it used to be we had youth when they were in the unit at the hospital, they had really some depression and cutting issues, and that was their weekly pass to come to the group. And so we've grown beyond that, and we have youth that are now much happier. We have family members who seek support and also to support their young people. We do education in the schools around sexual orientation, gender identification, and also to talk about issues that LGBTQ youth face and their families. We also do ally training. So we've gone to municipalities, businesses, social workers, healthcare providers around serving and supporting young people and their family members. We also work with the school counselors, so when they have a youth that come in to help connect them to services. Another primary group that we focus are people who use drugs. And unfortunately, you've heard about the opioid crisis, and we have not escaped that crisis. It's not just in the rest of Canada, it is in our community. And I'm going to give you some numbers later to highlight that. But it's one of those really marginalized and vulnerable populations that we work with. So it seems kind of extreme. We have LGBTQ youth and we have people who use drugs, but ultimately they are people who need support and services in an inclusive community. And as former AIDS organizations, we always were sort of on that edge and helping those people who were less accepted in their communities. So it's sort of a natural for us. It's not to say our populations won't change with time, and certainly with the new mission and the name, we're able to broaden if we need to do that. We're not a big organization, so we have 5 full-time staff, and we're fortunate just to have 2 new youth that we signed up with the Youth Employment Program. But we have 5 staff members. You'll see there's Sarah up there. She does the harm reduction education. The next person, Bridget, she does support for services and primarily looks after managing all the funds. We're primarily funded by federal government, Public Health Agency of Canada, and they require lots and lots of paperwork, so it keeps our bookkeeper busy. We also do receive funding from the province of New Brunswick for the needle distribution and harm reduction work that we do. And we have Abby, who just left us on Friday, but she delivered the needle distribution program service and will be filling that position. And Catherine Delage is our community inclusive outreach worker, and she delivers the Safe Spaces program in the 3 counties. And then there's myself, paper pusher. So the support that we provide are through the populations that I talked to. So folks that access the safe spaces and needle distribution, harm reduction, we provide one-on-one supports. We might connect them to community services. We also provide support to LGBTQ youth and their family members so that they are better supported as they go through the school system and access our programs. But one of the groups that's also quite often forgotten about are families of people who use drugs. We have just over 900 individuals that we serve. So that is 900 families in this tri-community area that we serve. And then if you start to add, everyone has 4 or 5 members in their family, you start to see we quickly grow from 900 people struggling with this addictions issue to 3,500 people in our area. No small numbers. And certainly the need is great. What we're finding now is that we have parents of adult children bringing up their grandchildren. And as one mom said to us one time, I didn't want to be a mom again, I just wanted to be a grandmother. So the families really, really struggle. And we have to find support for that family because we don't want those children being traumatized and having to access services as well, because we know that addictions is a result of trauma in their lives. And so it's important that we try to support the families as best we can so that those children don't grow and become generational people with addictions. Right now, for example, we have a client that we serve, and it's anonymous, but we have a mother, we have a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter that all come to us for a service. We don't want that to become the norm in our community. So you'll see primarily some of the funds, and these funds are funds that we get through donations, not through government funding because they don't do direct service, but we've given just over $4,000 in the past fiscal year for transportation for folks to get around on the bus system. And we've done almost 300 hours of service for support. And then whatever we can get in donations, because, you know, the tri-communities are very generous, and so we take mittens and hats and boots and, you know, personal hygiene products and those type of things, because the folks that we work with are very marginalized and most often living in quite extreme poverty. Another part is the education, of course, so we want prevention. So we did 58 safe spaces presentations in the schools and reached about 1,500 people through that. And harm reduction, we did 41 and it reached about 414. And I'll elaborate on the harm reduction when I get to the harm reduction. And the allies training that I talked about would be included in those numbers for the service providers and folks that we train. So harm reduction. It's like the seatbelt in your car, which we've been doing for 40 or 45 years. It's reducing the harm. So we recognize that drug use continues. We recognize it is not a habit. It is not a lifestyle. It is a health issue, and a very complex health issue affected by drama. And what we strive to do is to support people, help them to reduce the harms while they're using. So we do that in a number of ways. The key way is that we do a needle distribution program. So we provide drug-using apparatus so that it's sterile and that it reduces the infections of HIV and other blood-borne infections. From 2017-18 to 18-19, we had a 96% increase in the request for supplies for the needles. That will tell you how it's grown. We've had a 25% increase in people. We've had 30% in visits. So the needles is an indication that drug use continues. It sometimes is also an indication of the drug being used. There's a variety of reasons. So if you're using the opiates like Dilaudid, which used to be the drug of choice, then you would inject fewer times. When you move to cocaine, crack, crystal meth, you increase the usage of the supplies, and that's what we're seeing now. So we understand the need to monitor prescriptions and to reduce the frequency at which they were being prescribed, but while we did that and patted ourselves on the back, we sent the folks that we serve to the street, to the black market, and now they have to go and get drugs that we don't know what's in them. We don't know the quantity, we don't know the quality and the effects on them, whether fentanyl or not fentanyl. And so that's created a real issue for us. And you don't want people in your community using crystal meth. I want to tell you it's very dangerous for all of us. They are so psychotic and so erratic and can be very violent. It's just like, we don't want that in our community, and we have to work collectively to address that. Like, how do we support and reach out to them, and how do they get services without affecting others? So, for example, when you take someone to an ER room, that's not the place for them to sit when they're being psychotic, for the betterment of everybody. But, everyone's taxed. RCMP are not mental health. They are not addictions, but they often get caught up in this. And they do what they can. Mental health services are so limited that everyone's struggling to deal with this crisis. And I have parents calling me with 15-year-olds now saying, what do I do with my child? I can't access services. And that's heartbreaking. Most of our folks are 30 to 40 years old. But when I start getting these calls from desperate parents, it's really heartbreaking. So we do that direct service so that they don't at least get an infection. And the other part that we do is the education. So we provide naloxone administration training. We also provide needle safety training. We've done that from kindergarten up to, the city of Moncton had their public works folks trained, because you may have heard in the news they were having some issues with lots of discarded needles being found. We worked with them and sourced drop boxes to put around in some of the city's parks, and trained some of their staff around the safety. We also do talking about stigma and discrimination, because that is our biggest challenge, trying to provide services and support to people with addictions, is that people not understanding what addictions is, can discriminate. And I want to tell you, it happens in all walks. It happens at the healthcare service, it happens at local services, and just in families, people not understanding the complexities of what addictions is. And so we strive to deliver that type of education around the community, and we do it at a variety of places. Again, businesses, municipalities, churches, schools, just about wherever we can reach out and do that training. We also give out naloxone kits. Now, we do provide them to our clients, but you have to appreciate, if you're overdosing, you're not in a position to give yourself a naloxone shot. But we do provide them also to them, but also to their family members and friends, and anyone that works or has the likelihood that someone may overdose. They can be trained and should have kits, and we have those available for them as well. I'm just trying to give you the quick 101. And safe spaces I've mentioned before, and I've already given you some basic information, but just to know that this is where the youth are starting to really shine. We have some that have graduated now and got scholarships, gone on to university. Some are becoming community leaders. Some are providing the training. Instead of Catherine going into the schools, we now have some of the youth doing that training within their own schools. Most all the schools, not only high school, but we're delighted to say middle schools, because it used to be just high schools we got into, but in middle schools have gay, straight alliances, and so the youth are starting to be the leaders in their own community to create those inclusive schools. And the schools have been most supportive over the years and continue to be, to make sure that their schools are a safe place for the youth to be. And then, of course, as we all know, volunteers play a key role. As I mentioned, we have 5 full-time staff. And so, you know, the use of folks like Megan, who comes in every week faithfully from Petty-Kodiak, I might add, and she works the needle distribution desk 1 day a week for us so that our staff can do the other training components that they do. And you can see that over the past year, we had 76 volunteers and close to 900 hours of service that they've given to us. And so that's greatly appreciated, and most nonprofits would have that as a key component to their program and service delivery. And then just a small note, back in 2005, we were approached to partner with an African AIDS organization, which we did, and today we are not partnered with the AIDS organization, but we are still connected to a small rural community in Swaziland, which is in southern Africa, has the highest HIV infection rate in the world, and when you go and see the devastation of children and grandmothers trying to survive with the parents gone in between. And so, you know, we took material things because, you know, we got lots of stuff, right? We pay to rent storage so we can put our stuff in it and forget we have stuff. So we were able to take lots of stuff to them, but it wasn't sustainable and it was expensive. So I remember the chief telling me one day, you know, there's one gift you can give the children that will last them a lifetime and no one will take it from them, and that's education. So we've, over the years since 2005, been able to provide education to well over about 150 young people. We're just winding the program now. There's one more year, and we currently have 15, and next year when we're finished supporting them, they will have all graduated. And so, you know, people say, why Africa? We have need here, but we're a country of wealth, right? And we have an abundance, and it doesn't hurt for us to share, and I think we have a bit of a moral obligation to help those who are less advantaged as we are. We come from a great country. And with that, there's a thank you to all the folks, and you'll notice the city of Dieppe is listed there. So we send an application for your grant program that you have, and we appreciate that you make a contribution to us. It's $2,000, and we're able to use it to deliver some of our local programs. So we thank you for supporting that, because we know that municipal government is not necessarily social services, but we do appreciate the help that you give us. So on that, I'm going to leave you with a quick video that will speak volumes for the harm reduction that we do. And again, thank you so much for your time. And if there's questions after, I'll.
We're just about on time, but we did steal about 5 minutes earlier, so we'll extend. So.
So I'm Matthew Vaughn. I'm 28 years old, and I like to think of myself as a survivor of the overdose crisis, because my substance of choice was fentanyl, and you know, I've been using for a long time, and I finally found a path of recovery. And you know, I like to help people who use substances and kind of show them a message of hope, you know, and that they're worth it, because for a long time, due to stigma, you know, I didn't think that I was.
We as humans continually make choices every day that could put us into harm's way. Driving home, having sex, consuming coffee, trying a cigarette. That's just a human thing that we do. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we're all consciously thinking that something negative is going to come out of that or harm is going to come out of that. We want to believe that it's not going to happen to us.
Addiction does not discriminate. You could be from a very good family, and you could be from a not so good family, or it doesn't. Nobody knows who's going to be affected. But just know it could happen to you.
Service providers have, you know, the power to change people's lives, but if you have a negative impact on one, then you don't ever want to go back, and maybe you're sick and you won't even go to a walk-in clinic because of that one service provider that, you know, called you a junkie or said, I'm not treating you because, you're still using. You need to treat people like human beings, no matter what their past is, no matter if they just got out of jail, no matter if, they're using substances right now, they still need to be treated with respect and dignity. And just like you would treat, a family member or a colleague, you can be the one that will help them in their journey and on their path to recovery.
People only need to have that one person. It doesn't matter who they are. And literally anybody could be that person.
Every individual, I'm sure, that's out there that's struggling with a dependency is probably just waiting for someone just to be kind to them, to give them that little faint bit of hope.
Instead of using the words junkie and addict and, kind of those words that have like a negative ring to it, it's just a person that uses drugs or a person with a substance use disorder. So you're putting the person first and then putting the disease after, because those diseases are just one part to all of us. It's not our whole identity. It's not complete all of who we are. There's a lot more to us than our mental illness, our addiction, our job. Over time, you see that, okay, maybe these terms are kind of negatively affecting things, just like in any other aspect.
I just hope people realize when they look at someone, whether they're a paramedic or an RCMP member, or someone driving at the red light and sees somebody who is so ill, homeless, hungry, alone, that they can at least smile at them.
As service providers, we all just want to help people, and that should really include everybody and not exclude different groups like people who use drugs.
They're still a human being, no matter what their circumstances have led them to be. They're still a human being, and they deserve just as much rights and services and kindness and consideration and support as the next person.
If you come and treat them like, looking down at them instead of looking at them, it's, it doesn't even have to be the language. It could be the way that you sit with somebody or the way that you, just the presence in the room, that body language is huge. There's just so much you can do as a service provider to help individuals and not only change lives, but save lives.
Okay, thank you. Merci.
Thank you. So questions now from council members. Councillor Godet, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It's a very powerful video. That's the second time I see it, and it still affects me. And I got to commend you for your 30 years of active service in this area. I don't know how you managed to cover all those years. I think you're a hero to the community, I'm sure, because it is a very, very difficult area to work in. And I also want to commend your volunteers. I don't know how they do it. It's one thing to volunteer, and I don't want to take that from anybody. It's one thing to volunteer for a festival, but it's another thing to volunteer to work in areas such difficult and very highlighted problems of individuals. So congratulations on that. My question is related to the opioid and drug abuse. Is there a light at the end of the tunnel with respect to this, or because your numbers are kind of scary? It's going up and up and up, and the law enforcement doesn't seem to be able to contain it. Is it more a question of education and support? What's it going to take to start bringing those numbers down? Is there any way out?
Well, I won't say it's hopeless, but the challenge is that it's beyond, it's not even law enforcement, right? It's about mental health. We have very little resource. I mean, the current staffing for mental health are so under-resourced. You can't, 6 months, 8 months if you can even get in. So let's start there. I mean, you just can't take and put your trauma there and wait 6 months. So we need more mental health services, which you can advocate for your community. You have a big voice as a municipality. And, you know, you keep hearing us talking about housing. I mean, I'm getting pretty tired of it. For the last 20 years, we keep saying housing, housing, housing. Everyone ignores us. I guess they think our heart's on our sleeve. And then we end up with the crises we've had over the past few months that Moncton's had to try to deal with. And I'm sure you're not without your homelessness either. So it's really about addressing poverty, trauma, supporting families. It's complex, but it's not impossible. And, you know, we need treatment services. Where do people go? Like, we have, like, I think there's less than 20 beds just for women to go for treatment. I mean, we don't have enough facilities. So it's really about starting to take ownership and all of us doing our parts. And I really going after those that are in that position. In this case, the province, right? It's health. It's a health service. The Public Health Agency of Canada, I'm going to do a little plug for the Liberal government, I have to. The prior Conservative government would not even let us use the terminology harm reduction. Anything related to harm reduction was not funded, was cut. End of it. When this current government came into place, money just, it really, for us, it more than doubled for us. We're able to do the harm reduction. We're funded to do it. We're able to do, like, you know, even a surveillance to see, like, what's the real issue. So, you know, they do harm reduction. They do support it. So we're kind of nervous about what might happen tonight, after tonight. But it is about going after the provincial government. It's a health service, right? And it's complex, and they need to step up to the plate.
Thank you, and I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Merci, M. Godette. M. Leblanc.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Maire. Thank you, Debbie, for your presentation. It's, by a small word, an eye-opener. I guess one thing that I may have missed or didn't see it in presentation is, where are your locals located at for help?
Sorry?
Your locals are located where for a person to get?
Oh, sorry, 80 Weldon Street.
80 Weldon.
Yep.
Okay, I was looking to find information on where you were situated at, and I couldn't find it.
Yep, that's where we are.
On Weldon. Thank you.
Merci, Madame Arsenault.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. Mrs. Warren, what you do is amazing. And I really like the new name. Ensemble is very nice. And it's inclusive, and I think that's much more appropriate because it does include everyone. Sometimes I wonder just how many people we are actually enabling when we're trying to help them. And I know you can't just help one individual without also helping the family, because it encompasses everyone. I really admire your volunteers, because it has to come from the heart, not just from the brain, to help these people. You said in Africa you've succeeded in helping 150 people. I don't know if I missed it in the presentation, but how many did you help here in our tri-community? Is there any specific number that you've succeeded in educating?
They were in some of that data in their report. So in the safe spaces, there were 1,500 people that were reached with, this is ally training, LGBTQ issues, sexual orientation. And then there was another about 500 that had participated in the naloxone and needle safety training and stigma training. Plus, we serve our numbers for current are 900 unique individuals, which means not counted twice by their visits, but different people. So we currently serve just over 900 people who use drugs.
The other thing, you mentioned Africa. Bill Gates was doing his best to try and completely eliminate AIDS. Did you not try to get into his organization for a little bit of funding, or is this something that was not feasible?
His funding is around the treatment program. He also works with the Clinton Foundation. We were doing more community work, and so we were funded to go and do that. Initially was through Crossroads International, and they work in various communities across the world, and so they were the ones that was supporting our partnership when we initially started.
Because as human beings, we were trying to eradicate all these problems globally, because it's really encompassing everyone in every country. I really wish you the biggest success possible, because I really have hope for our humanity. Thank you very much for coming and giving us such a good representation.
Thank you.
For being able to give it right off the cuff without actually following word for word on paper.
I guess I kind of live it every day.
Yes, that's quite visible.
You, Monsieur Alain.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Maire. Debbie, I've known you for 15 years at downtown Moncton. Great job. You're doing great work. Amazing. Super job. I know that plug-in, the Councillor Cuddett's going to like that plug for tonight. But after the election tonight, don't worry. Everything's still going to be all right.
I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to hold you to that.
Whatever happens. But he liked that plug. He liked that plug.
Yes, I momentarily forgot. That's okay.
But Debbie, by far, this is a great presentation. You indicated what your organization is all about, the mission. What I love is about financial statements are there. That's awesome, because a lot of organizations come in front of us and we don't have that information. So look, my small question. So there's a lot of organizations like yours with that social advocacy in our area. Has 3+ or some type of organization, there's a lot of people that come and see us for money. And it seems sometimes that we're all doing the same work, but we're not, because obviously if it's homelessness, food banks, that social fabric in that, is there some way or some type of exercise that we've ever done to see where Ensemble fits in that, and how can we feed off of the other organizations?
So we do work with the other organizations. Like in homelessness, we were one of the original founders on Greater Moncton Homelessness Steering Committee. We also work with a group that has set up a drop-in for sex trade workers. It's called SWAG, Sex Workers Action Group. We were the founders of that, and we stepped aside as chair, but we continue to work. So we're connected with all the groups, and we do try very hard not to duplicate. Our primary focus is around the drug use, right, and the youth, but we also connect and share resources with the others. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I just want to make sure that you guys are not, so obviously Health Canada is a big partner, and you provide some services for them. Is there other organizations, like you said, in mental health? It's a mental health issue. I totally agree, 100%. It's all.
So we work with mental health.
If we would be even proactive in this, we wouldn't be in this opioid or fentanyl problems, right?
Right. So we do work with mental health and addiction staffing, right, when we're looking for support and services. We also work with Canadian Mental Health Association when we're looking for training and support. So we do access other local services, and we try very hard not to be duplicating. The challenge is everyone's stretched to the limit, right? Everybody needs to raise funds. We're somewhat fortunate. We don't do fundraising like we used to, because we were spending 50% of the time raising funds when we should be doing 100% of the work. But since we have the increased revenues from the Public Health Agency of Canada, we really do our point set a campaign. Just we've been doing it for years for Christmas, so we do it. But fortunately, we're able to focus 100% on the work that we do, because the Public Health Agency of Canada has provided us with that increased funding. And some of the other organizations aren't so fortunate and don't have government agencies to fund them. Now, as you know, government, it can just be the stroke of a pen and we can be gone. We could be gone.
No pun intended.
And we know that, but they need us for the services.
Great presentation. Thank you for taking the time to come and see us.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Debbie. Just, I'm sure you're aware this afternoon, major decision in Ohio, or settlement in Ohio, with regards to the opioid companies that are supplying drugs, and there was a $1 billion lawsuits, actually 3 companies in Ohio that were being sued by 2 different counties, settled for $260 million. The lawsuit, and one of the companies is called McKesson, which I think happens to have an office here locally. So just thought I'd pass that along. Thank you very much for your presentation. Continue your great work.
Thank you, everybody.
And pour les membres du conseil.
For members of council, it's one of the reasons we invite different organizations that we sponsor and fund, so that the members of council are made more aware of the activities that are included in the budgets of the awarded amounts.
Nos prochains invités sur...
So our next guests on the list, Monsieur Jean-Paul Desjardins and Irénée Bourque, to talk to us a little bit about the hospice Southeast New Brunswick, which was announced over the last months as a major project. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you for giving us the chance to explain our project, Hospice Southeast. For those who don't know me, I'm Irénée Bourque. I'm fairly new with the organization. 6 months ago that I joined the campaign cabinet, and I also am part of the board of Hospice Southeast. Before that, I was 2 years on palliative care of Beau Séjour here in Dieppe. That's a residential service, palliative accompaniment. In my 2 years of experience in palliative care, I was wanting to make sure that people have an end of life in an appropriate environment in the Greater Moncton region. Things will be explained a little better with a short video, and then Jean-Paul will go more into detail in the on the project and our request. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Elle est aussi importante que la vie. Souvent, même dans mon domaine médical, les gens vont me dire « Ah, ben, pourquoi tu fais ça? Tu travailles dans mon cours, ils vont mourir de toute façon. » Ben, on va tous mourir de toute façon. C'est la façon qu'on passe puis qu'on meurt qu'il faut qu'on regarde.
There are many patients and families who are unable to look after their loved one at home, and they feel guilty about that. Residential hospice would provide them with quality of life for the time that they do have left. And I think this would be a huge relief to patients, especially knowing that there is a place that they can go to when their care needs become too great to stay at home.
La résidence a besoin dans la communauté parce que les gens maintenant vont à l'hôpital dans les chambres qui a 3 personnes par chambre. Alors, on va bâtir une résidence où les gens vont avoir une chambre individuelle pour le client, puis aussi on a les chambres pour les familles.
What we're hoping to do with the new hospice facility is offer a place where someone who is coming to the end of their life can come in an atmosphere of love and respect and comfort.
Our goal is to build a bilingual residential hospice which will serve all citizens of Southeast New Brunswick. It will offer support, comfort, and compassion for people with a life-threatening illness and to their families.
Nos services sont offerts par une équipe des employés dévoués, par les nombreux bénévoles et par des généreux donateurs.
Je pense que d'avoir un espace qui serait dédié en soins palliatifs pédiatriques, je pense que ça nous donnerait cette opportunité-là de pouvoir penser les soins palliatifs pédiatriques différemment, puis leur donner accès à cette même dignité qu'on offre aux adultes puis aux personnes âgées.
Southeast New Brunswick, Albert County, Kent County, Westmoreland County. It's a beautiful region, a beautiful place to live, and it should also be a good place to die in love, with respect, and in comfort. And that's what Hospice Greater Moncton is working towards.
I would like to think that this service would be out there for all of us in the event that we ever need it. And I'd like to think Hospice Greater Moncton will be there when we need it.
Good evening, Monsieur Desjardins. Jean-Paul Desjardins. I think we're going to raise the mic. I'm just going to give you an overview of the project. People have been getting together since 2004 to build a palliative care center. It's been very difficult year after year. At the beginning, the volunteers were signing lines of credits so that the organization could survive. After years, they were able to pick up 100 volunteers, and they succeeded in getting funds. And so when the provincial government in 2018 developed a palliative care strategy because of the aging population, they decided to set up the project for a 10-bed center. So this started with the Moncton Alliance that donated a piece of land just next to Fabricville on Pleasant Drive. They gave a piece of land there. So that's when everything started working. So I'm here to explain to you what is a palliative care center. Most people want to die at home in an environment where they have natural caregivers. When that no longer is possible because it involves too much pain, very difficult problems of health, they can be put in a hospital environment. So there's a whole category of people who don't need the hospital because the hospital costs approximately $1,100 a year, whereas the palliative care, the community palliative care, would cost $400 a day. So with the aging of the population, we figure that in the region here, Kent, Westmoreland, and Albert, Canadian norm, we need approximately 1 per 10,000 inhabitants, 1 palliative care per 10,000. So what we're getting ready to do is a 10-bed project. That means that we'd be 12 beds short of what we're going to be needing long-term. But it's a project that is starting, and it's a project that has to get going because people who have been involved in this have never operated a palliative care center. So the way it's going to work is Extramural will be sending nurses, and the doctors will be paid by Medicare. So anything that has to do with care, nursing and medicine will be assumed by the government of New Brunswick through agreements and transfers. And anything that is going to be non-medical, in other words, the building of the building, the maintenance of the building, energy, food, maintenance, it's the community through this organization, hospice has a store that is called Their Shop. It's a social business that basically generates $175,000 profit per year. So people bring their things there when people die, and they're sold, and they get a charity receipt for funds that they receive following the sale of the stuff that they brought there. We announced that there was a campaign. I mean, since then, there are bags that have been coming in. It's incredible. There's a lot of things. So the organization, what we're doing is setting up things up. The building of the project, I can say it's clear, it's going to start in April 2020. And the two Dieppe businesses that are going to be working, Construction Acadienne and Kent, okay, it's not Dieppe, it's Bouctouche, but things are managed here. So it's going to be a modular building. So we expect to be able to open the doors in November 2020. That means from one day to the other. Hospice Southeast New-Brunswick is going to be an operation 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, because people die on a regular basis. The challenge that we had at the get-go was to have a regional center, because this is what the province wanted us to do. And we wanted to serve the three southeast counties, Kent, Westmoreland, and Albert. And Moncton is a little far. Going to Alma or Port Elgin or Capelé or Richibouctou. So what we did was we wanted to create the feeling all across the three counties that this belongs to everyone. They're going to be the two official languages. We want to have the people to have the feeling there, whether they come from Elsebouctou, Richibouctou, Petit-Kodiak, Capelé, everybody is going to be welcome there. So we started with Chuck Steves, who basically helped us establish a strategy with the LSDs and the municipalities, and we're requesting of everybody that they participate with the concept that each citizen of the three counties will have indirectly contributed to this initiative. And in the building, there'll be a plaque at the entrance to indicate all the municipalities who would have contributed, so that the people who go there and are going to walk around inside will have the feeling that it belongs to them. So we want people to take ownership of the place. So there are a lot of things that are happening. I can tell you that the community is really solidly behind this project.
From the beginning, we felt that this project would be supported by the general community. In the beginning, this project was Anglophone, and they opened their arms and they said, we want everybody to take part in this program. So now we have a project. We went to see the province and the federal government, and they both said they supported this project with services in both languages. That brings me to a mathematical formula, which is fair. We're asking financing from the City of Moncton. We wanted $500,000 from all collectivities, including SLDs, and we're asking Moncton for half of that amount, because the building will be their territory. We divide it with by pro rata the whole of the rest of the population. That gives us an amount for Dieppe of $46,187 for 5 years. So $9,000, $220 a year for 5 years. And that's what we're asking all other municipalities and LSDs. We're doing presentations everywhere. Sometimes groups will get together and we'll do it, but we've come to see you directly. I invite you to ask me any questions, should you have any. Thank you. Any questions from councillors? Madame Arsenault. Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening. You're saying $46,187 for Dieppe and each other municipality except for Moncton. And LSDs, that's the same amount for them too? The LSDs in Westmoreland, you have a population of 21,500. Albert, 7,600. So we're asking them for Westmoreland. It's a global amount that we divided for them. It's $39,000 for all LSDs in Westmoreland, $13,000. I have those figures for you. So it's equal for all populations. It's a mathematical formula, so everybody has to pay the same amount. That's wonderful. It's a great idea. But you did not mention, but you did mention 10 beds. About how many children do you think there would be a need for beds in our region? The palliative care center will have one room for pediatric care, palliative pediatric care for children. This room can be used for other things, but it'll be flexible enough to change so that children can stay there. A child that dies, by comparison of an older person, is very different. I thought about the child who is dying and in need of palliative care. Do you think that has increased in our region, a need for that? You haven't seen any statistics? There's no palliative pediatric bed in Atlantic Canada, none. The group wanted to create a space because everybody's seen the children die. And we've seen cases since I've been in this project. A mother of 39 years old with 2 children at home does not want to die in front of them. She doesn't want to go to the hospital either because rooms are full, visitors come for the 3 families in the room. But a woman went to the hospital, that's where she died, but she didn't want to leave her children at home. I don't have statistics on the number of children who die, but there are some, yes. But presently, do you have a certain number who need help? No, we don't at this time. But we'll be equipped to take care of them if there is a need. Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Alain. Thank you, Desjardins. We would like to have those figures, please, respecting the populations. And number 2, the hospices in New Brunswick and Fredericton and St. John are there, right? There's one being built in Miramichi as well. So in Greater Moncton, there's none at all. Dieppe would be maybe for the next 10 beds would be on the list. I'm taking care of the palliative center that we're working with now, so I wouldn't be the right person to ask. I just wanted to say, when you have people like René Bourque, a businessman from this community, to help you, it's a wonderful project. So thank you, René, for all your hard work. Any other questions? If there are no other questions, thank you for your presentation. We will consider your request, obviously. We have so many more. Yes, we've seen that. So this ends our presentations.